Ross Myles, I've just been looking at what is your first book, Voiceless Naivety. So how did you get into writing?
I started in 2004, 2005. I committed myself to become a writer. But then I was looking for a story that it connected with me. But then it was too many stories, small stories, and I needed one continuous story. But then when my friend took his life, the last penny dropped with all those small stories, and it became a book called Voiceless Naivety. Because the reason of his suicide was that he couldn't cope, but he didn't say anything. So he was voiceless through his modesty and his naivety. Although he was kind, he didn't believe in other people's kindness. And that's where the book started coming through as some sort of story that has to be told to others, either to bring them hope or to give them some understanding. Either way, it's a good thing for them to read it.
So that book was written about 2004 or 5, is it?
Yes.
So here we are in 2020, and so how many books have you written since?
I have written a trilogy called Turek Trilogy, which is a science fiction fantasy trilogy about a very dominating planet, and the two neighboring planets were very cultured, and they actually built a hub between the two planets so they can exchange culture and ideas. But the third planet, which was Turek, was very powerful. It was interested in the hub, but not in the form of collaboration, in the form of more domination. And that's how the story goes. Obviously, you can't tell much about the story to give away the essence of it.
So do you have a particular discipline when you write? Is it when you're writing? Is it just how do you write?
I usually wake up first thing in the morning. I like to start writing when I have nothing to disturb me from the usual life sort of thing. So in the morning, that's what I write. That's where the juices are. Sometimes in the evening or at night, I do editing. I edit what I have written earlier, or even something I have written before, you know. I never research, I never look into anything. I just open the laptop and start writing, and somehow, for some unknown reason, it just all links up to the previous writing.
What about influences? Any writers influence you at all?
Oh yes, of course. You know, there is obviously many writers because I speak 3 languages. Then obviously there is 3 literatures I can benefit from and read and enjoy. 3 types of poetry, 3 types of fiction. So there is a lot in that. And obviously one of the languages is French, which is a very rich language. So yes, Albert Camus, George Orwell, obviously Shakespeare is always sitting up there in the top of the crown.
So what is it about a writer like Camus? What was it about his work?
He was, it's the way he detached himself from the reality. He just, I think the first sentence of his book, The Stranger, was, "My mother died. I think it was yesterday or this morning," or something like that, you know. It was yesterday or this morning, almost as if that's his mother's death, and he's talking about it. It might be yesterday, it could have been this morning. He was that sort of detached.
But I believe you're originally from Algeria.
Yeah,
would anybody read your work and say, I think that man might be Algerian or an Algerian influence? Or
I don't think so, because if they read it, they know I understand the culture of North Africa. But it wouldn't be enough for them to say he's definitely born in this country or that country. Because in Voiceless Naivety, I speak about Alan, the main character, who goes to Egypt. Now, I have been to Egypt, but I haven't stayed there long enough to understand all the ins and outs of it. But because the culture is almost homogeneous across the North Africa, then obviously I picked up quite a few things there, which I put in the book just as, you know.
Do you speak to other writers, or is this quite a solitary pursuit?
It is a solitary pursuit. I wish I could speak to other writers. I wish I could meet other writers. I wish I can benefit from the understanding of other writers. But unfortunately, as it turned out to be, just a very, very lonely business, you know, just sitting there in front of a keyboard and a screen.
Lonely, or as Shakespeare said, is it not Shakespeare, I think it was Wordsworth, the bliss of solitude. Do you find sometimes you're happy working on
yes, yeah. The solitude is probably, it's almost like a reset button that gives you the opening to the writing. While you are not, even when there is someone at home and I'm trying to write, I cannot write, even though if they're upstairs and I'm downstairs. It's just finding that, the isolation. You know.
Did you mention plays? Have you written any plays?
Yes, I have written plays. I have written a play called Maze Makers, about people who create all the trouble in this life. I written called The Kingship, about a young king, a young prince who inherited the kingdom. They didn't want it, and he wanted to understand things before he could run his kingdom. But when he went to understand things, he also understood that the kingdom idea wasn't his. And
have they been reformed?
Unfortunately, not yet. I would like to have someone to do at least a table read for them so I can see how they function. There's another book, another play, which is a very big play called The Fifth Wall, which is about television, which has become as big as a wall in some cases. There is a fifth wall. We have 4 walls in the house, and that television has become the fifth wall. And the play explored the idea of this fifth floor, as a television as a fifth floor.
Are you working on anything at the moment?
I'm working on an adventure story about probably the people I admire most, who are the teachers. And he's a retired teacher who won the lottery, a lot of money, you know, like a European lottery, 150,000 or something, 150 million I think he won. And he buys a yacht so he can take people who are like-minded and they will learn how to enjoy nature. Because he understood that within this nature there must be a joy that they have to hit on and then connect with, so nature can do the rest for them, because joy does exist as much as sadness exists. Yeah.
So what's your message to anybody of any age who's thinking, I'd like to start writing, or I'd like to get published? Finally, what's your advice?
Don't think you start writing because you want to be published. That's a very wrong idea. Publishing is one thing, writing books is another. You write your book because your gift said so, your personality inside says so. If that book turns out to be a great story and the publisher likes it, fine. If not, it doesn't mean it's not a very good book, it doesn't mean it's rubbish, it doesn't mean it's wasted effort. It just means that commercially it wasn't viable to some publishers who just use their own judgment, nothing else. It's just one person judgment. So that book could be enjoyed by many, but if it is one person judgment to publish it, that doesn't mean it's not going to be enjoyed by many. No, far from it.
Okay. Ross Myles, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.